Word, judge. Description refers to a person who is in charge of making decisions, particularly in a legal or competitive setting. It can also mean an opinion or assessment of something's quality or value. It's often used when discussing evaluations or opinions. Phrases of example. First, I will not judge, but I will remember. Second, it's easy to judge, but harder to understand. Third, do not judge a man until you have walked in his moccasins. Word, plot. Description, the sequence of events in a story, movie, or play. It outlines the main happenings and how the story develops from beginning to end. It can also refer to a secret plan or scheme. Phrases of example. First, the plot thickens, and I am in the center of it. Second, the plot of our lives is always more interesting than we can imagine. Third, the plot demanded a sacrifice, and he was the chosen one. Word, officer. Description, a person who holds a position of authority, often in a police force, military, or government. It describes someone entrusted with specific duties and responsibilities, signifying a formal role or rank within an organization. Phrases of example. First, the officer waved his hand, and the crowd parted like water. Second, a police officer stopped me for speeding. Third, the officer saluted, his face grim. Word, general. Description means relating to a group or situation as a whole, rather than to a specific detail. It describes something that applies to most people or things, or is not specialized. It's used to indicate something broad and not particular. Phrases of example. First, the general order was to attack at dawn. Second, in general, I can say that I am happy. Third, he spoke in general terms, avoiding specifics. Word, neighborhood. Description refers to an area of houses and streets, usually a residential area. It describes the community where people live, often characterized by a sense of belonging and shared space. It's a place with familiar faces and local amenities. Phrases of example. First, the neighborhood was a maze of narrow streets and crumbling houses. Second, she walked the neighborhood, a ghost in her own life. Third, the neighborhood felt different, somehow, after all that had happened. Word, grant. Description, a formal permission or right to do something, or an amount of money given for a specific purpose. It signifies an official agreement or allocation, often bestowed by an authority or organization. It can also refer to acknowledging someone's request or claim. Phrases of example. First, the king had the power to grant requests, but rarely did so. Second, he hoped for a grant to fund his research. Third, it was a generous grant of freedom. Word, grow. Description means to increase in size or number, or to develop. It can refer to plants, people, or amounts. It also means to raise crops or livestock. It's a very common and basic action verb. Phrases of example. First, he watched the plants grow into their fullest glory. Second, we grow old, and we have no time left for our dreams. Third, the children grow up so fast, it's hard to believe. Word, line. Description means to arrange or cause to form a line. It can refer to people, objects, or abstract things, and implies organizing them in a row or sequence. It suggests creating order or structure through alignment. Phrases of example. First, he tried to line up his thoughts, but they scattered like leaves. Second, she lined up her books on the shelf, neat and orderly. Third, the soldiers lined up, ready to face the enemy. Word, residential. Description describes an area or building used primarily for housing. It signifies a zone or structure designed for living accommodations rather than commercial or industrial purposes. It indicates a focus on homes and living spaces. Phrases of example. First, the residential areas were transformed by the relentless march of industrial expansion. Second, the district was primarily residential, though a few businesses dotted the streets. Third, it felt safer than the residential districts where the rich lived. Word hearing. Description refers to the act of listening or the ability to perceive sounds. It can also describe a formal legal proceeding where evidence is presented and testimonies are heard. It implies an active process of receiving auditory information. Phrases of example. First, his hearing was failing, but he still remembered the music. Second, the sharp hearing of a predator detected him in the snow. Third, her hearing was acute, attuned to the slightest nuance. Word need. Description expresses necessity or requirement. It indicates that something is necessary for a particular purpose or that someone is lacking something. It can also show a want or desire for something, though it's more than just wanting. Phrases of example. First, we need not think about what may happen tomorrow. Second, you need only look at the stars to know that you are not alone. Third, we need to be the change we wish to see in the world. Word writing. Description refers to the activity or skill of using letters and words to communicate. It can also mean a piece of writing, like a letter or a story. It's a basic form of communication and expression. Phrases of example. First, his writing was beautiful, elegant, and powerful. Second, the writing was on the wall, and they knew what it meant. Third, writing is the crystallization of thought. Word ending. Description refers to the final part of something, like a movie, book, or relationship. It marks the conclusion or termination of an event or process. It indicates the point at which something comes to a stop. Phrases of example. First, and so ended their long and winding road. Second, the ending was not happy, but it was true. Third, the story has no ending, only a new beginning. Word long time. Description describes something that has existed or been present for a considerable period. It emphasizes duration and established presence, often indicating a deep connection or history. It's used to highlight something's longevity. Phrases of example. First, it was a long. Second, a long. Third, the weight of a long. Word presence. Description refers to the state of being in a particular place or the fact of existing. It can also signify influence or effect. It describes someone or something's existence or impact on a situation, often creating a sense of atmosphere or significance. Phrases of example. First, his presence filled the room, a palpable force of quiet strength. Second, the absence of his presence was more than just an emptiness. Third, her presence was a balm to his weary soul, a silent comfort. Word disability. Description refers to a physical or mental condition that limits a person's abilities. It can affect mobility, senses, or cognitive function. It's often used when discussing challenges, support, or legal rights related to such conditions. Phrases of example. First, despite his disability, he persevered with unwavering determination. Second, disability is not inability, it's a different ability. Third, she had faced disability and hardship, yet her spirit remained unbroken. Word invade. Description means to enter a place or system by force or illegally. It can also describe overwhelming or flooding something, like an emotion or a feeling. It suggests an intrusion or forceful entry, often with negative connotations. Phrases of example. First, the enemy forces began to invade our territory, causing widespread fear. Second, the Japanese began to invade Manchuria in 1931, marking a turning point in East Asian history. Third, memories invaded my mind, a flood of forgotten moments. Word daughter. Description, a female child. It's used to describe the child of one's son or daughter. It's a common word to refer to a female offspring and is used in family relationships. Phrases of example. First, my daughter, she's a beautiful girl. Second, and then she saw her daughter, small and perfect. Third, my daughter's name is, well, it's a secret. Word, normal. Description refers to something usual, typical, or expected. It describes a state or condition that isn't unusual or abnormal. It's used to indicate something that conforms to established patterns or standards. Phrases of example. First, it was normal for him to be late, but not for her to wait. Second, nothing is normal in this place. Third, a normal life is a beautiful thing. Word, damage. Description refers to harm or injury caused to something, making it less valuable or useful. It describes the negative impact on an object, person, or situation. It is used when discussing repair, cost, or the extent of harm. Phrases of example. First, the damage was done, and there was no turning back. Second, the damage to his reputation was irreparable. Third, the war left a lasting damage on the city and its people. Word, alternative. Description means offering a different possibility or choice. It describes something that can be used instead of something else. It implies that there is a different option available when the original one is not suitable or desired. Phrases of example. First, it might have been the best alternative. Second, this alternative to the usual treatment was his only hope. Third, she had no alternative but to go on. Word, greenhouse. Description, a structure with glass walls and roof used for growing plants. It provides a controlled environment, protecting plants from harsh weather and allowing for optimal growing conditions. Often used in agriculture or for botanical research. Phrases of example. First, the greenhouse was full of strange and exotic plants. Second, he built a small greenhouse at the back of the house. Third, the greenhouse hummed with a humid, vibrant energy. Word, dose. Description denotes the amount of a substance, like medicine, given or taken at one time. It can also refer to an amount or quantity of something, often unpleasant, experienced at once. It signifies a measured portion or exposure. Phrases of example. First, a regular dose of melancholy can be quite bracing. Second, the doctor prescribed a therapeutic dose of sunshine. Third, his laughter, a potent dose of joy, lifted her spirits. Word, around. Description indicates movement or location in a circular path or near something. It can also mean happening or taking place in a particular area or time. It's used to describe position, movement, or time frame. Phrases of example. First, we kept our mouths shut and we walked around. Second, he looked around and saw the world was all new. Third, and so we came to the end of the road, and the world began to turn around again. Word, treaty. Description, a formal agreement between two or more countries. It establishes terms for relations, like trade, boundaries, or defense. Treaties are legally binding and require ratification to be enforced. Phrases of example. First, the treaty was signed, but the underlying tensions remained palpable. Second, they negotiated a treaty, fragile and provisional, but a treaty nonetheless. Third, the peace treaty, so meticulously crafted, proved illusory in the face of renewed conflict. Word, management. Description refers to the process of organizing and controlling people or things, especially within a business. It can also describe a group of people who handle those processes. It's used when talking about leadership, planning, and control. Phrases of example. First, the lack of proper management leads to chaos and despair. Second, good management is the key to success in any endeavor. Third, her management of the household was impeccable, a study in efficiency. Word, far. Description indicates a great distance, either physically or metaphorically. It describes something distant in location, time, or degree. It can also suggest something is advanced or beyond a certain point, showing a separation from something else. Phrases of example. First, though the day is far, I feel the approaching night. Second, the moon was far away, a silver coin in the black sky. Third, he had come a far way since then. Word, authority. Description refers to the power or right to give orders, make decisions, and enforce obedience. It can also describe expertise or knowledge in a specific area, granting someone influence or respect. It highlights legitimate power or recognized expertise. Phrases of example. First, power is not a means, it is an end. One does not establish a dictatorship in order to safeguard a revolution. One makes the revolution in order to establish the dictatorship. The object of persecution is persecution. The object of torture is torture. The object of power is power. Now you begin to understand me. Second, there is no authority like that of a book. Third, knowledge is a kind of power, and power is a kind of authority. Word, welfare. Description refers to government support provided to people in need, such as financial assistance or social services. It describes a system designed to improve the well-being of vulnerable individuals and families, often addressing poverty or hardship. Phrases of example. First, the people need welfare. The government must provide it. Second, the whole notion of welfare is fundamentally flawed. Third, he lived off welfare, a life of quiet desperation. Word, execution. Description denotes the carrying out of a plan, task, or sentence. It can refer to the implementation of something complex or the formal carrying out of a legal punishment. It implies a process brought to completion, often with significant consequences. Phrases of example. First, the execution of the order was flawless, a testament to their training. Second, an execution is a great tragedy, not because a life is ended, but because lives are broken. Third, the execution of justice is as important as the principle of justice itself. Word, bombing. Description refers to the act of using explosives to damage or destroy something. It can describe a deliberate attack or, less commonly, the effect of something exploding. It's often used in news reports about conflict or disasters. Phrases of example. First, after the bombing, the city was nothing but rubble and dust. Second, they lived in fear of another bombing, a constant dread. Third, the memory of the bombing was seared into his mind. Word, invasion. Description denotes the act of entering a country or territory by force, often with military action. It implies a hostile takeover or intrusion, frequently involving a violation of boundaries or sovereignty. It can also refer to an overwhelming influx of something. Phrases of example. First, the invasion began with a single, terrifying explosion. Second, the Roman invasion changed the face of Britain forever. Third, the invasion of privacy is a serious threat to freedom. Word, second. Description means the next to the first or another of two things. It's used to indicate position, quantity, or time, usually referring to something that comes after the first. It's a common word used in basic descriptions. Phrases of example. First, he felt a second chance to live his life. Second, she came a second time and smiled. Third, it was a second miracle. Word, anyone. Description means any person or people at all. It's a general term referring to an unspecified individual or individuals, used when the specific identity of the person isn't important or known. Phrases of example. First, it is not good to be alone, and it is not good to be with anyone either. Second, I cannot imagine anyone being so cruel to a child, not even a king. Third, I don't think I've ever loved anyone as much as I love you. Word, fear. Description, a feeling of worry or anxiety about something bad happening. It's an emotion that arises when you sense danger or something unpleasant might occur. It can be a response to a specific threat or a general feeling of unease. Phrases of example. First, fear is a natural reaction to moving closer to the truth. Second, fear is a powerful emotion. and it can paralyze even the bravest. Third, fear not, for I am with you always. Word habit. Description, a usual way of behaving or doing something, often done regularly. It can be a good or bad pattern of behavior. It describes something you do often without thinking much about it. Phrases of example. First, habit is a great deal stronger than reason. Second, a man's habits make him as much as his fortunes. Third, it's a bad habit to think you know everything. Word half. Description refers to one of two equal parts. It describes a quantity that is not whole, but represents one portion of a pair. It's used with nouns to indicate a portion or amount equaling one too. Phrases of example. First, he ate half of the pie and felt very satisfied. Second, it was half. Third, I only did half of my homework last night. Word grin. Description, a wide, often joyful smile. It suggests amusement, pleasure, or sometimes a mischievous or sly feeling. It's a more expressive smile than a simple smile and conveys a particular emotion or attitude. Phrases of example. First, his grin broadened, revealing a flash of white against his tanned skin. Second, a slow grin spread across her face, a silent promise of mischief. Third, the villain's grin was unsettling, a predatory curve of the lips. Word afraid. Description means feeling fear or anxiety about something. It describes a state of being worried or scared, often related to a potential danger or unpleasant situation. It is used to express a feeling of apprehension. Phrases of example. First, the only thing we have to be afraid of is fear itself. Second, I am not afraid of storms, for I am learning how to sail my ship. Third, he was afraid of a lot of things, but he was not afraid of living. Word football. Description refers to a popular sport played with a ball and involving two teams trying to score by getting the ball into the other team's end zone. It's a game many people enjoy watching and playing. Phrases of example. First, the boy loved football, a simple pleasure in a complex world. Second, football was life, a source of pride and unity for the town. Third, he dreamed of playing football, a path to a better future. Word amid. Description means surrounded by or in the middle of something. It indicates that something is located or happening within a larger environment or group. It's often used to create a sense of complexity or to highlight a specific element within a scene. Phrases of example. First, amid the clamor of the city, he found a moment of peace. Second, amid the ruins, a single flower bloomed. Third, the old house stood amid a grove of ancient oaks. Word displace. Description means to force someone or something from a place or position. It suggests a removal, often due to pressure or power, and implies a previous occupancy. It can be used literally or figuratively to describe a shift in status or influence. Phrases of example. First, the storm's fury displaced many homes and lives, leaving scars on the landscape and hearts. Second, political upheaval can displace entire populations, scattering them across borders. Third, his ambition displaced the bonds of family and friendship, leaving him isolated. Word manifest. Description, to become clear or apparent, often after being hidden or unexpected. It can also mean to display or show something openly, like emotions or qualities. The word suggests a revealing or emerging process, often with a sense of force or prominence. Phrases of example. First, the anxieties manifest themselves in sudden, inexplicable fits of rage. Second, his deep. Third, the collective grief began to manifest as a palpable sense of despair. Word voice. Description refers to the sound made when speaking. It can also mean someone's opinion or viewpoint. It is used when describing how someone sounds or what they are saying. Phrases of example. First, the voice of the people is the voice of God. Second, he heard a voice calling him by name. Third, her voice was low and sweet. Word, express. Description, to show your feelings or thoughts clearly. It means to communicate something, whether verbally or non-verbally. It's about conveying your ideas or emotions to others in a way that's understandable. Phrases of example. First, they could not express their true feelings. Second, he tried to express his gratitude, but words failed him. Third, the colors express emotions that words cannot convey. Word, blow. Description means to breathe out or to cause something to move with air. It can also refer to something striking or forceful, like a gust of wind or a sudden impact. It's a common and simple action or event. Phrases of example. First, a man who lives his life with a blow in his heart. Second, he was a man who lived his life to blow out the candle. Third, the whole world was a strange and terrible thing to blow. Word, counseling. Description refers to professional guidance or advice given to help someone deal with emotional or psychological problems. It suggests a formal process involving a trained professional offering support and strategies for personal growth and well-being. Phrases of example. First, the counselor offered insightful counseling, guiding her through a difficult time. Second, seeking counseling proved instrumental in his journey toward self. Third, the play offered a complex exploration of counseling and its limitations. Word, other. Description means something different from the first thing mentioned. It indicates a choice or alternative, showing there's more than one possibility or item available. It's used to contrast or add to what has already been stated. Phrases of example. First, it was a new day and another chance to be free. Second, she was always the other woman, looking in from the outside. Third, there is always another story to be told, another path to take. Word, dentist. Description, a person who specializes in caring for teeth and gums. They provide services like checkups, cleanings, fillings, and other dental treatments to maintain oral health. It's someone you visit for dental care. Phrases of example. First, I hate to go to the dentist. Second, the dentist said I needed to floss more. Third, she went to the dentist and didn't complain. Word, dream. Description refers to a series of thoughts, images, or feelings occurring during sleep. It can also describe a strong desire or hope for something that you want to achieve. It's used to talk about what happens when you sleep or a cherished wish. Phrases of example. First, it was a good dream, a very good dream. Second, the dream is not the thing itself, but the reflection of a greater truth. Third, we must never let go of our dreams.